Proverbs 6:16 through 19 states 6 things that Yahweh hates and 7 that are an abomination to him. So I guess there are 7 things, not 6, that he hates. But the problem is, Yahweh himself is guilty of all 7. Let's take a look. Verse 17 says first that Yahweh hates a proud look. Now, we might not be able to read that Yahweh looks proud, but we can sure find places in the Bible that show he acts proudly. We're proud when we have a really high opinion of ourselves. We take deep pleasure or satisfaction in our qualities or achievements or possessions or whatever. I think you know that Yahweh has an extremely high opinion of himself. He thinks he's perfect. He says he's perfect. He thinks he ought to be praised continually. He thinks others should behave with a higher standard of morality than he himself lives by. Yet he still expects and even demands to be treated as if he's the very best being ever to exist, as if he has some right to judge others, despite his own evil behavior and his hypocrisy. The next thing Yahweh hates, also mentioned in verse 17, is a lying tongue. Well, isn't that rich? We know Yahweh is a liar himself, as he sends lying spirits to prophets, declaring that if a prophet is deceived, he himself is the one who deceived the prophet. He also sends strong delusions to people in an attempt to cause them to believe lies. The third thing mentioned in verse 17 is hands that shed innocent blood. We can find a lot of evidence in the Bible that Yahweh sheds innocent blood. He drowned babies in the flood. He had Israel murder babies, even suckling babies, whom we all know are innocent if anybody in the world is innocent. He even killed the son of David, who was obviously innocent, as a means of punishing David himself. And by the way, this was after Yahweh had already forgiven David's sin and removed it from him. Yet he still exacted revenge by killing David's innocent child. Yahweh is the world's most prolific shedder of innocent blood. Verse 18 starts with a heart that devises wicked imaginations. Well, Yahweh came up with the plan to create humans and have them eat from a tree so he could kill them. And he put the tree in their presence and allowed a conniving creature to tempt them. Then he came up with the plan to murder his own son so he could forgive the people he caused to sin in the first place. This, of course, also goes against the shedding of innocent blood. The next thing in verse 18 is feet that are swift to running to mischief. We've seen that Yahweh is quite mischievous, but he also admits to creating evil. He did make Satan, after all. And really, how could evil exist if Yahweh didn't create it? Verse 19 begins by mentioning a false witness that spreads lies. We already discussed this, but we know Yahweh speaks falsely. He's made that clear, as I showed, in both the Old and New Testaments. And naturally, the lies Yahweh causes people to believe get spread around to others. Finally, verse 19 gives us the 7th thing Yahweh hates, which is someone who sows discord among brethren. Yet we see Jesus doing just that. He even stated that he didn't come to bring peace but a sword, declaring that he came to set a man at variance against his father and a woman against her mother and mother-in-law, and that a man's enemies would be they of his own household. This was the plan from the foundation of the world. So as you can see, Yahweh himself practices all the behaviors he hates in others. Perhaps that's why he becomes angry when others act like he does. Maybe he hates himself for how he is, and he blames others for acting the way he does, rather than taking a look in the mirror at himself. Perhaps he condemns others in an attempt to make himself look better. Maybe the whole Bible is simply Yahweh projecting his wickedness onto everybody else. Whatever the reason, we can have no doubt that Yahweh does every single thing he hates. Can you explain this, Christians? Yahweh is the creator, so he can do as he pleases. Isn't a good answer. As you like to say, he defines what's good and what's evil. And he has defined for us here what he considers to be evil. Yet we see him committing these evils himself. So what do you think? That he's allowed to commit the evil he hates and considers abominable in others, yet he can still be called good? Why? Why are these behaviors good when he does them and evil when we do them? Or in fact, why are they even evil if Satan does them? The truth, of course, is that Yahweh does nothing. The truth is that some man, or perhaps more than one man, came up with this list. While whoever was writing this obviously recognized that we humans ought to live by a decent moral code, he failed to grasp that his God does all that he condemned. Yes, the list certainly documents bad behaviors, and it's good to tell people they shouldn't act like this. But to lie and say a God said all these things and then be crazy enough to admit that the God himself actually performs the same actions, well, that shows an inability to recognize that people might need to be more careful about what they write in a book. Eventually, those who hear the words learn to read. Eventually, some of them learn to recognize evil wherever it appears, even if it's in the so-called good book. Eventually, some people have the guts to say this book is not from a good God. You can just ignore everything it says. And eventually, people get sick of those who try to cram the book down their throats, and they fight back. And you know what else? Eventually, I believe more and more people will recognize the Bible, what it is. Biblical gods will go the way of a lot of other gods. They'll just be like a vapor that appeared for a little while and then vanished away. And may this happen sooner rather than later. Thank you all. Bye.